assume we're still waiting for the light before we start. We're good. Wait until you're standing where I'm standing. This directly.
Good?
Is that good?
All right. Let me thank all of the members of the press for coming to this crucial and critical inquiry. We believe that what we've done today lays a foundation for what we will do to help Houston and Harris County receive its just amount of funds for Harvey. It's important for us to thank persons who were here. The mayor was here and had to leave, but we appreciate his being here, and he took up more time than we anticipated. The county judge was here and had to leave as well. Commissioner Adrian Garcia likewise came and had to leave. There were city council persons here who could not stay longer. All of these persons we appreciate. Senator Whitmire indicated that he wanted to be here and could not make it. I want to thank my colleagues who are here with me. Each will be introduced in just a moment after I make a very brief statement. The hearing was called so that we could acquire the intelligence necessary to make the case for proper funding for Harris County and the city of Houston. We believe that the testimony that we've received has made the case. The record is still being left open for additional testimony. We plan to summarize the hearing, and we plan to submit this summary to the House Financial Services Committee as well as to HUD. We plan to ask, as Congresswoman Jackson Lee has indicated, and we have planned to do, we plan to ask HUD to appropriate a specific dollar amount for Houston and for Harris County. We don't believe that the nebulous terminology that's been utilized is sufficient. We see that things are happening in contravention of HUD policy and, quite frankly, what may be in contravention of law. And as a result of these things that we are seeing, we believe that it's time for us to take appropriate action so that we can redress the harm that's already been caused and prevent additional harm from being imposed upon the citizens of Houston, Harris County. But we should all remember this. It's not just Houston and Harris County that suffers with HUD's inaction. the money can't be delivered to the end users until GLO submits its amended action plan to HUD. GLO has written a letter indicating, as I read it, that it has not sent that plan, but will submit that plan. I would submit that after the time that has lapsed, GLO is woefully late and should have submitted the plan. And that if the plan is not submitted, I believe that we have to ask that HUD take action on its own initiative, ab initio, as we would say in the law, that it take action and that it would make sure that the people in Houston, Harris County get the just amount of money that the Congress obviously intended Houston and Harris County to receive, and HUD has so much as indicated such in a memo that I've received. Finally, I want to thank Commissioner Ellis especially, because he called to my attention on more than one occasion that we needed an inquiry of this type. I thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate your persistence because it was for a worthy and noble cause, something that you're known for. At this time, I'm going to introduce my colleague who serves on the Financial Services Committee with me. She also serves on Judiciary. She is a very dutiful and meaningful and mindful steward of our tax dollars. She is the person that I work closely with to bring this event to fruition. I present now and ask that she would give her comments, the Honorable Sylvia Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and before I begin, I did want to make note that Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher was here during the hearing but had to leave for another commitment. I'll start there, Congressman. You know, I've been watching dollars, I think you all know, since I was city controller. I watched them when I was a county commissioner, as a state senator. I've been through a lot of storms, a lot of disasters. This is the first time that any formula, any matrix, any guideline would result in the city of Houston and Harris County getting zero, nada, zilch. You can ask any person on the street today who had a lot of damage, who should be getting the money, and they would certainly say that Houston and Harris County deserve some of that money. So that's what this is about. We are here to unified to urge the commissioner to submit the plan, and I would urge him to do it before the end of this month. Before the end of this month, so that we can get the ball rolling, because we've been waiting too long. And I think that he needs to do his job. He knows about this, he's been working on it. I'm disappointed he's not here today. I'm disappointed that the letter we got from his office wasn't even signed by him. And I'm especially disappointed when I hear from some of our officials that one of the responses from his office, I don't know if it came directly from him, but it came from his office, that, well, we know that you all can raise taxes in Houston. Now that is just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous to tell our folks who suffered the most, well, it's okay because now you all can raise taxes. That's not what this is about. This is about the damage, the need, and making sure that people recover. So I urge the commissioner to submit the plan by the end of this month so that we can get the ball rolling. Enough is enough. Y ahora unas cuantas palabras en español. Aquí estoy con todos los funcionarios. Le doy las gracias al congresista Green y a la congresista Sheila Jackson Lee. También estaba aquí presente con nosotros la congresista Lizzie Fletcher, y tenemos los oficiales del condado. Aquí estaba Lina Hidalgo, teníamos aquí el alcalde, aquí estaba también el comisionado García, y está aquí con nosotros el comisionado Ellis. Todos unidos, porque cuando es una cosa de las emergencias que tenemos aquí, todos tenemos que estar unidos para estar seguros que recibimos los fondos que merece nuestra área para poder a levantarlos y para poder a seguir adelante. La fórmula que hizo el comisionado Bush no lo podemos aceptar, porque resultó que nosotros aquí en Houston y Harris County recibimos nada, ni un níquel, que es ridículo, porque ya sabemos que nuestra área tenía mucho daño, muchas personas sufrieron, perdieron sus casas, así es que necesitamos los fondos y los necesitamos pronto. Así es que yo le pido al comisionado Bush que hagas el plan para el fin de este mes para poder recibir los fondos inmediatamente y más pronto. Así es que aquí estamos con todos reunidos en la misma estrategia, ¿no? Para poder resultar con los fondos que merecemos. No queremos quebrar la línea, no queremos nada especial. Queremos lo que debemos de recibir igual como todos. Así con eso le pasamos el micrófono a la congresista Sheila Jackson Lee.
Let me have just a word in bringing up Congresswoman Jackson Lee. I neglected to mention Congresswoman Fletcher, who's a co-host, and you did, but I want to acknowledge that she has played a significant role in what we've been able to produce. She has been a team player, and it means a lot to have her on the team. Now I'd like to bring up Congresswoman Jackson Lee, who is a co-host of this event as well. She's not on the Committee of Jurisdiction as it relates to HUD, but she's in the fight. And it seems to me that it matters little as to which committee you're on if you're in the fight. She is in the fight, and I welcome her comments at this time. The Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee.
Thank you for having this inquiry and the opportunity for the members of the Harris County delegation, two of whom happen to be on the Financial Services Committee, to convene this inquiry, of which I am delighted to be a co-host. Thank you to the leadership of both Congresswoman Garcia, and Congressman Green, and they will have the ability to do a deep dive on the Financial Services Committee. Again, my acknowledgement of Congresswoman Fletcher, who has joined and worked as well with all of us, and Commissioner Ellis, Commissioner Garcia, Councilmember Kanan, and Robinson, and Jackson, who were here as well, our housing representatives, all of these individuals, and Commissioner Ellis, Judge Hidalgo, represent the intensity of this issue. So first of all, let me say, we should have put an empty chair so that the absence of the General Land Office could have been conspicuous. As a state officer that represents everyone, Republicans and Democrats, independents and otherwise, Texans, no matter what language you speak, what neighborhood you're in, the General Land Office should have been present to provide the transparency and factual basis for, as my colleagues have said, zero funding. I think in the tenure that I've been in the United States Congress, I have never seen an announcement of zero from the Housing and Urban Development, no matter whether the president at the time was Republican or Democrat. Hurricane Ike, the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, when we took 250,000 people from Louisiana into the state of Texas. I remember specifically George W. Bush calling then Governor Perry and saying, you need to take these people, meaning that in the course of a disaster, the Republican president called at that time a Republican governor. There was no litmus test for who was coming from Louisiana. It was just, you need to open your doors to these people. Americans are coming. And in Houston, Americans in Harris County desperately were impacted by Hurricane Harvey. And just as a brief memory lane, I was at George R. Brown for 7 days, but the stories in our neighborhoods, what about a group of survivors that were on a little elevation of a gas station? They couldn't get out. That is where they wound up because of all the water around. The tragedy of losing families, certainly a family in my area that swept away in a bayou, or the officer that Commissioner Hidalgo talked about. There was death in Hurricane Harvey. There was sadness, and there were people who were barbecuing their meal outside their house. There were food giveaways. This was preceding food trucks. And people were opening their restaurants, and people were eating their breakfast, their lunch, their dinner. Does the GLO understand the pain that Harris County went through? And so the zero is penetrated in my head. Also, the inconsistency of the formula when HUD and the law focuses on social vulnerabilities, which are the many neighborhoods that we have spoken about. So this inquiry was crucial for us to frame our next step. I think it is important that our collective voice encourages HUD to instruct the General Land Office to expedite their plan, to move their plan and move heaven and earth, to be able to work day and night, to, as my colleague said, to get the plan in before the end of June. And then at the same time to work with HUD to construct the award that then is in the plan. And in the United States House, we have something called self-implementing. So once the comment period goes, HUD reviews, HUD approves, the immediate approval of that plan, the distribution of dollars comes to Harris County and Houston. That is how it must come. The immediate distribution of funds upon the approval of the plan. We have a cooperative administration in the Biden-Harris administration. We have an energized Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Madam Secretary Fudge, who comes from an urban area and is very sympathetic and has been in contact with all of us to say how they can help. In the backdrop, as I close, it is certainly not this press conference to speak of spying on members of Congress. But in the last administration, approvals and reviews were given without any engagement with members of Congress. That is their protocol, as they spied on members of Congress. We have a new day now, and we have a cooperative, collaborative administration that wants to work with us. I say to the GLO, if you're ready to stand up and get the job done, the Biden administration, Secretary of Housing, Urban Development will work with you and work with us to get the dollars back to our community. And thank you all very much for your leadership.
And now we will hear from the person that I introduced earlier when indicating that he was persistent, insistent, that we have this inquiry. I will just simply say one additional word. His presence in government will be known by the work that he has done. It is across the length and breadth of the area that you can see his work. I'm honored to introduce and ask our colleague, the Honorable Rodney Ellis, to have comments.
Thank you, Congressman Green and Mr. Chairman. Only your leadership, along with your co-convener, Congresswoman Garcia, and of course Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, could get the mayor, the county judge, 2 county commissioners, 3 council members here. I know Commissioner Ramsey is going to submit testimony, so thank you for what you're doing. Thank you all, the entire delegation, for fighting to get this funding after Harvey for Harris County, Houston, the entire state of Texas. It was very important. Look, everybody else has said it. I don't have to repeat it. I'll just give you one analogy. Could you imagine after Katrina, if the federal government gave money to the state of Louisiana and whatever metrics they dreamed up, they would give nada, nothing to New Orleans? People would be rioting in the streets. And I think that's why you saw the bipartisan outrage after this. I want to make the point that it is not just about Houston and Harris County, by the way. Congresswoman Garcia, I really do believe equity ought to be more than just a 6-letter word that oftentimes people treat like a 4-letter word. might I add. That's why I made reference to the provision I saw in the complaint from Texas Houses. Could you imagine Jefferson County? I think, go check it, I may be wrong. I thought I read it was Port Arthur that got the largest amount of rain. Congressman Green, Mr. Chairman, we were sending stuff that came into us to Jefferson County. Our hearts went out because Houston and Harris County, we were all over the international news, but in Port Arthur and Jefferson County, how could you not give a dime to Beaumont, Port Arthur, and Jefferson County? There's something wrong with the process. They stated it clearly what we want. Mr. Chairman, it's pretty much what's in your bill, which I'm going to make sure that the county, I'm going to make the case that we should support it. We want a direct allocation. We shouldn't be in a position where the GLO is micromanaging it, because then we get into fights. I hope HUD would take a good look at the administrative fees. You think, I can't remember the number, it might be 350 million. If they taken 350 off the top to figure out how to administer it, and this is what they administered, if they don't think we could do the flood projects, well, they could go do them. But don't deprive the people in Houston and Harris County, because there may be some political animus towards any of us in Harris County, Houston. We can get over that. We don't have to like one another. We don't have to support one another. Let's all support and show we love the people that we all represent. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you. I'm now honored to bring up the chairperson of the Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee for the City of Houston. She has hit the ground running, and not only has she done an outstanding job in terms of what she's simply done for constituents, and I enjoy working with her, to be very candid with you. She is a very pleasant person to work with, but she's also a very hard worker who wants to get results. And her work didn't start when she became a member of council. She was working in the community long before she became a member of council. And I do want to congratulate her for helping us to increase our voting population here in Harris County, Houston, Texas. I will now ask the Honorable Abby Kanan to give her comments.
Thank you, Chairman Green and Congresswoman Garcia, for co-hosting this along with my councilwoman, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and Congresswoman Fletcher, who also represents a significant portion of the district I represent that has been flooded, not just by Harvey, but multiple floods over and over again. I want to also recognize, as the city elected official here, not only Mayor Turner for his leadership, but my colleagues who joined us today, Councilwoman Tarsha Jackson and Councilmember David Robinson, who chairs our Transportation Technology and Infrastructure Committee. Houston and Harris County not only make up close to half of the statewide losses during Harvey, we are the only major city that has experienced consecutive flooding disasters, making the dollars that we're discussing today vital for us to build back stronger and more resilient. The state's intentional, and that's the only way to describe what has happened, intentional efforts to deprive Houstonians of billions of dollars specifically designated for areas hardest hit by Harvey is indefensible. No matter which way we slice it and look at the numbers, the formula that GLO used this time does not add up. As you've heard today, our constituents do not care whether flood relief comes from the state, the county, the city. What matters is that they are not mired in an unjust situation. The state cherry-picked numbers so that Houston would be excluded from these allocations, and I'm extremely concerned about the thousands of families that are being harmed by the state's decision to withhold critical infrastructure. We've talked a lot about housing and those opportunities, but these infrastructure dollars help large areas that are continuing to flood. And these are the funds that these are the people that these funds are supposed to help. So as chair of Houston's Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee, and even more so as a Houstonian, I find myself once again holding our breath as we start hurricane season. Remember, we're already into hurricane season, multiple years after Harvey. And the longer we delay because of politics, the longer we will remain in harm's way, and we're already on borrowed time. So to our congressional delegation for Houston and Harris County, thank you for standing up for us, for making sure our communities are not forgotten, and for making sure that we have action for the residents of Houston. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will remove my mask and apologize for not having worn it when I was not at the microphone. I regret that someone didn't pull my coat, as they would say. But thank you so much for tolerating me. Let me close with this before we take the questions. Someone indicated earlier that this system that was put in place was rigged to receive a desired result. I cannot disagree. It appears that the deck was stacked, that the determination was made, as I said, ab initio, at the inception, as to what would be the consequences for Houston and Harris County. I cannot give a rationale for it, but the actions seem to connote this was the direction that was intended from the genesis of the process. So I'm very much concerned about it, as all of us are. But we're doing more than simply being concerned. We're taking affirmative action so that we can bring about some change. With this said, we welcome questions from the press.
You've been very outspoken against the previous administration. Do you think that has something to do, like retaliation against maybe mostly Democratic city and county?
I think that it's difficult to say why, but I also believe that it's difficult to rule this out. I don't know why we would get a letter that references another letter, and the letters contradict each other. It makes no sense. A lot of what's happening here simply makes no sense. The allocation of no money to a county that was the hardest hit, a county wherein we had trillions of gallons of water, and this was across the area, but concentrated in Harris County, it just makes no sense. So I'm not going to say that this was the reason why, but I will say that I don't see how you can rule it out as you consider the multiplicity of reasons that might exist. And I would hope that the commissioner would rethink what he's doing and pursue a more just and equitable course of conduct for Houston Harris County.
Congresista García, ¿piensa que esto es un ataque directo a la gente de menos recursos, muchos de ellos hispanos?
Bueno, pues no creo que es directamente en contra de los latinos, ¿no? Es en contra de la ciudad y el condado, que si se fija uno quiénes son los líderes, pues sí son, una es latina y otro es afroamericano, ¿no? Pero más importante también, el condado y la ciudad votaron muy fuerte demócratas, ¿no? Así es que todo eso es la política que está, yo creo que Bush está haciendo estas decisiones por la política, no para la ayuda de la gente. Pero a todos modos no es la primera vez. Hemos tenido este pleito, ¿no? Después de Hurricane Ike y otros huracanes. La cosa es esto, que no ha habido ninguna emergencia huracán, que cuando ya van a dar los fondos, que no le dan nada a Houston. Esta es la primera vez, y ya me conocen, yo he estado en la política y en el servicio público por muchos años. Es la primera vez que lo hemos visto, y es la primera vez que tienen esta fórmula que no los quieren enseñar, no los quieren explicar. Así es que es tiempo que el comisionado haga su trabajo y responde al público a cómo hizo esto y hacer los cambios necesarios en su plan para que ya la gente reciba, para que la ciudad y el condado reciban los fondos. y lo necesita hacer inmediatamente. Yo le pido que lo haga para el 30 de junio, el fin de este mes.
Congresista, brevemente en español, ¿cuál es el propósito de la reunión de hoy? Esto se va a llevar al Congreso para que haya como un expediente de alguna manera. ¿Qué va a pasar si esos fondos no llegan al final a Harris y a la ciudad de Houston? ¿Puede proceder el Congreso de alguna manera?
No, eso sí no lo vamos a aceptar. Necesitamos que el plan incluya a Houston y el condado de Harris. Todos los congresistas estamos unidos en esto, así es que vamos a hacer todo lo posible. Ya tenemos una secretaria nueva de HUD. No, recuerden que el plan y una de las cosas que pasó antes era cuando había otra persona como secretario, era el señor Carson en HUD. Así es que esta secretaria ya los aseguró que ella va a ayudarlos, ella va a review el plan, va a review la fórmula y va a hacer todo lo posible para asegurar que sí recibimos el dinero que merecemos aquí en Houston y el condado de Harris.
Any other questions? Well, again, we thank you for being here, and we trust that the message that you will take to the masses will make a difference in the lives of the people that we serve. Thank you much. The press conference is over.